Mother Knows Death, starring Nicole and Jemmy and Maria Q. Kane.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mother Knows Death. Let's get started with the story of the week.
We're going to start off the show by talking about this company called Human Microbes, which is essentially the black market for poop. So why don't you start off telling everybody why you might need to go to the black market to buy poop?
Well, this has been, a buzzword thing for about 10 years now. And it's because all this research has been being done over the course of the last decade or so about fecal transplants. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. But it started off when there's been this increased risk of infections in the hospital called C. diff. And what happens, and you could get it if you're not in the hospital as well, but what happens is when you give antibiotics to a person, if they have a respiratory infection or something like that, or any kind of infection, what could happen is that the antibiotics not only kill off those bacteria that would be present in your respiratory infection, but they could also kill the healthy bacteria in your intestines. So there's always healthy bacteria in your colon that help break down your poop and they aid with digestion. But if they get killed off, then the bad bacteria, which is called C. diff, can overgrow. And C. diff is so nasty. In fact, I've had 2 autopsies of people who have died from C. diff infection. So it could be really bad. And I've also gotten multiple colons, toxic megacolons for surgical specimens for people that had a C. diff infection. And any nurses listening know that the poop has a very distinctive look and smell. And we just want to make sure that people don't get this. So what the research has shown is that if they can get a transplant from a healthy person's poop, then that could encourage their normal bacteria to regrow and it could cure them better, because you don't want to give the person more antibiotics, because antibiotics are great and they help, but they also cause other problems. C. diff is one of the greatest examples. So they do fecal transplants. Now, if we're in the hospital, it's done in the hospital sometimes. So you could do it in all sorts of different ways. But they usually deliver it with a colonoscopy. Because the first thing you think is like, I'm not eating someone else's poop, right? But so they go up and do a colonoscopy, and when they're up there, they kind of like shoot up a solution of someone else's poop from a donor. And they could also do it with an enema, or they do have a pill now that you could take that's like freeze-dried capsule kind of poop. That's the live bacteria that you would take. But this is all under a doctor's care. So to think that people were buying it off the black market and just buying it from the guy who owns the company that isn't even FDA approved or any kind of medical person is kind of alarming.
Yeah, so this guy started this business back in 2020. His name's Michael Harrop. According to this article we're referencing, he has a pretty questionable background. He has no background in medicine whatsoever, and he only found out about this procedure after having serious issues with his own health and seeing it on hearing about it on online forums. So he actually doesn't handle the poop himself. Instead, he contracts these donors, and they have to go through a whole questionnaire and everything to see if they're eligible to even donate their poop. And then once they've been approved, they are responsible for shipping it directly to whoever the buyer is, which these samples could go for $1,000 a pop, which is kind of nuts, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I want to look into it, maybe sell mine so I can make some extra cash.
So this guy is acting as this like internet poop broker, and it's very legally questionable, and there's no like FDA approval or anything. But
he's a poop pimp.
He is a poop pimp. So he himself has said he has not found success with this at all, but he does have very happy customers.
Well, there are a lot of studies done that not only obviously that this helps in CD infections, it helps like 80 to 90% of the time. So it definitely has been known to help. But it also, I actually know a doctor that I used to work with that she cured herself of an autoimmune disease doing a fecal transplant. And this was like 10 years ago, but she's a GI pathologist and she knew all about this
But was
upcoming research.
I thought that was with her own, though. Like, she sent it to a lab and then
She sent it to a lab to get tested, but you have to use someone else's that's healthy.
okay, I understand
So,
now.
so yeah, it's been shown to it could help anything from obesity to autism to autoimmune disorders, and because your bowel health is very important, because this is all has to do with the leaky gut syndrome, which we've talked about before.
Mhm.
And so you want your gut health to be really healthy, and this is one way to do it, but there's nothing currently FDA approved to do these fecal transplants besides for C. diff infections. So people are just trying it on their own. And you could kind of see that because when people have certain disorders and they're not getting any better and all they're doing is taking lots of medication, some people get desperate and they want to try something that's more natural. Of course, the thing to be concerned about is when you get something like this done in the hospital, they check the donors to make sure they don't have any infectious diseases, to make sure that they've never taken antibiotics at least within the past like year to 6 months, and that they're healthy enough to donate. And you don't really know what's going on when you're buying from a poop pimp, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and, like, what was funny in this article was there was, instructions of how the donors are supposed to, like, handle their own samples or, put them into capsules, and it was saying they should make this, like, batter concoction of their sample and then take a Ziploc bag and cut the tip off and, like, pipe it like icing into the capsule, and you just have to wonder if this is being done, uh, appropriately, if bacteria is spreading all over the place, if it's safe at all. So, of course, doctors are urging people to go through legitimate outlets as this is still a very experimental thing.
It's kind of nasty,
It is
actually.
kind of really nasty.
All right, let's get into some celebrity news.
So, Morgan Spurlock, director of the 2004 documentary Super Size Me, has died at age 53 due to complications with cancer.
All right, so of course, the first thing I thought of when I saw that he died and he had cancer at only 53 years old was like, oh my God, I wonder if this has to do with his crazy dieting that he was doing for his documentary. Did you ever see Super Size Me?
Yeah, so we actually had to watch it in health class in middle school.
Really?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, so I remember I saw it at the movies when it came out back in 2004, obviously. But for those of you who don't know, he ate McDonald's strictly for 30 days. And wasn't it something, it was called Super Size Me. So the thing was, is that he had these rules that when he went to the drive through, if they said to him, would you like to supersize that? Then he would get the biggest thing that they offered. And over the course since the thing came out, there's been a lot of controversy as to if he really had those problems that were associated with eating that kind of food for 30 days in a row, which included him having increased liver enzymes at least. And he was saying he lost his sex drive. He was very tired and his blood work was coming back that his cholesterol was high. But then he came out years later and said that he was basically an alcoholic during that time, which would justify his liver enzymes being increased. So we don't really know if that diet alone 100% changed what was going on with his health. But it's been known, there's definitely been a connection in a lot of studies that have come out that eating processed foods like McDonald's and sugary drinks and stuff like that increase the risk for certain cancers, like especially in young people, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer. So we don't know what kind of cancer he had.
Yeah, so the family hasn't come out and said what it is. McDonald's actually dropped that supersize option after the documentary came out, which I found really interesting. Um, I
Well, it was
remember,
bad publicity,
yeah,
for sure.
we watched it, or this came out in 2004, so I was in fourth grade then, and I believe we watched it in sixth or seventh grade. Remember, you had to wait like forever for DVDs to come out and everything after a
Yeah.
movie came out. So I'm sure we watched it not long after whichever health teacher of mine got it on DVD. But I always remember watching it because I also remember, the dickhead kids in my class being like, "I just want McDonald's now. I don't care." So Yeah.
The most disturbing part of that documentary for me wasn't like whatever. Of course, if you eat like that all the time, you're gonna have bad health. But it was more of like how they made the chicken nuggets. That they're not even like a piece of chicken. It's just like this paste of mixture of stuff that they put in and make that Santa boot shaped nugget. You know what I mean?
Ew.
That I used to find so delicious as a child.
I just don't like some things I just don't need to know how they're made.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but yeah, it's sad to see he died. He hasn't really worked in Hollywood that much in the last couple of years because during Me Too, he came out and said he was contributing to the problem and he had to step down from his production company, and I think that kind of effectively ended his career in Hollywood. So I was shocked when I saw his name pop up.
Yeah, and he also, I'm sure, was getting chemo and stuff too
Yeah.
for whatever cancer he was having, so that's probably why, but I mean, it sucks. I wish the family would come out and say what the cancer was because it would be nice to know because then maybe you could correlate it with all of these crazy diets he was doing.
Yeah, totally.
All right, next story.
So, Charlie Collin, who is the bassist and founding member of the band Train, has died at 58 years old after a freak accident, slipping and falling in the shower while he was house sitting for a friend in Brussels.
That's really sad, and especially he wasn't found right away. Apparently, he was there for some number of days before the homeowner came home and found him.
Yeah, his mother was saying that it's not clear exactly when he fell because he wasn't found till the friends came home from their trip. So it could have been, I don't know. I guess the investigators would know more, right? Because of his level of decomposition, they could
Yeah,
estimate it
totally.
better.
I just, some one of my followers on Instagram messaged me the other day and told me that her dad died. She was kind of freaking out. She said, "My dad died and he wasn't found for a couple days and the funeral home strongly advised me not to see him, but I don't know what to do." And I said, "You know what?" I wrote her back and said, "If it were me and the funeral director or the medical examiner told me not to view, I wouldn't view because we try, and when you do autopsies and stuff, you try everything in your power to be able to, and funeral directors too, to be able to help people view their loved one, especially if they're not having a viewing or they didn't get to see them before they passed away or after they passed away. And when we're not able to do that for a person, there's good reason. And I say that because when I first started doing autopsies and going on scenes and seeing decomposed people, my very first thought was, "Oh my God, I can't imagine what it would be like to walk in and find somebody that you either are friends with or your loved one that looks like that." Because they're green, they're bloated, they smell terrible, sometimes might have insect activity like maggots, and it's just really disturbing, to say the least, to see, especially like your parent or your best friend in that condition. So these people came home from their trip and found their friend looking like that, and that's really sad.
No, it is really sad. And, when I was in Europe, I don't know, what, 12 years ago now, I noticed the bathtubs are significantly higher than here. And I slipped a couple times at the hotels we were at just because I simply wasn't used to it. So I'm wondering if that could have been a contributing factor. But regardless, this is just such an unfortunate incident.
Yeah, and they'll do an autopsy to see what happened because there's lots of different things. Like, it could be something as simple as, like, in the case in my shower, like my daughter decides she wants to put coconut oil in her hair. This was this week's one. I think I told you about the one last week where it was hand lotion or something
Oh, this
coating
is a
my
new
bathtub. This
situation?
is a new one that she decided she wanted to put coconut oil on her hair as a hair treatment. So I got in the bathtub and the bottom of the bathtub was covered in coconut oil. So it could be something as simple as he slipped on coconut oil in the bathtub, or he could have had a heart attack and then fell as a result of that. So they'll be able to tell that at autopsy, depending on how decomposed he is. But they still should be able to see because they'll be able to see if he had a brain bleed or something like that. And depending on how new the heart attack was or if he had a history of something like that, they'll be able to see that and get the answers on that one.
Yeah, this is such a sad situation. especially because he was so young.
I know. I hate hearing when young people die.
All right, so next, in September on the Gross Room podcast, we had reported that Kourtney Kardashian had emergency fetal surgery but didn't specify exactly what it was. Now that the new Kardashian season is out, she's talking a little bit more about what happened, but still really isn't being specific about it.
It's so annoying. I remember when we first reported this back in September, we were saying, "Oh, they're giving vague details because they want us to tune in to next season of Kardashians." Just how like calculated they are about every single thing they do. They just can't even talk about their life because they just want people to tune in all the time, right? And she didn't give any details then, and now she's saying how people are thanking her for coming out and talking about this, and I'm just like, "You're not talking about anything, you're not giving any details."
Yeah, I think that's why I kind of find it annoying because she keeps being like, I'm proud I shared my story. And I do think it's cool as a celebrity to share a story when you're going through something like this so other people have more awareness of it, or if they're going through something similar, they're not alone, but she's not really sharing anything. And it's kind of annoying that this is a story again because she's still not saying anything.
Well, I think back in September, it was so vague that we were like, "Did she have fetal surgery or did she have surgery on her
Yeah, because
uterus?"
wait, explain for people that don't know, like explain what the difference would be from what was first reported and the fetal surgery.
So sometimes you could get surgery on the actual womb or the uterus if there's a problem with the baby, maybe like the cervix isn't strong enough to hold the baby in or something like that. So sometimes they could do that, but that would be surgery that's actually on the mom, whereas fetal surgery is surgery that's done on the fetus. So sometimes they go in and they actually, if they see something on ultrasound that could potentially be a problem, they go in and do surgery on the fetus itself, which is kind of unremarkable actually. Like it's really, really it's crazy that they could do something like that. But sometimes there's something called amniotic band syndrome, which is like pieces of the sac kind of break off and could tie around a limb. And if they see that, they can go in and cut it off because that could make the limb kind of grow deformed. I don't even know how far along she was when they saw this. And she didn't tell us why they did this surgery. But now that she said that they put a hole in her amniotic sac and she wasn't allowed to drive or really walk around that much after the surgery, I could say for sure that she definitely had surgery on the fetus. But still, she didn't tell us what they saw on ultrasound. You know, when her doctor went to her house to do the ultrasound, because that happens normally for normal people.
Yeah.
They didn't say like what the doctor saw and why they decided that they needed to go in right away and do some kind of surgery. So I mean, it's nice to talk about, but like you still didn't talk about anything. And how is that bringing awareness if you're not talking about what actually happened?
Yeah, and like she reserves her right to not talk about it at all, but like she is, but then not giving any details. So I just feel like it's kind of hindering the actual awareness part of this.
All right, let's talk about another annoying celebrity that craves medical attention.
So Kate Beckinsale recently posted some videos on Instagram and faced a lot of criticism that she was appearing too thin. So she wrote back and said she was going through a lot, including the death of her stepfather, her mother was facing issues, her beloved cat of 19 years had died, and that she had spent 6 weeks in the hospital due to copious vomiting blood.
So I find this woman extremely annoying because of all the selfies that she was posting. And I think the theme of this episode, especially later on, we're going to talk about just like a lot of people doing selfies all the time, especially in weird, inappropriate situations. But there were these weird selfies she was posting of like her wearing this giant bow on her head with this like sad face and not saying anything, just like I'm in the hospital and this and that. And it was just, didn't you think those pictures were kind of weird?
I think anybody posting pictures in the hospital, maybe minus the birth of a baby, is a little attention grabbing.
It was a lot of it though. Like there was multiple pictures and it with the bow and everything, it was like she had like a stuffed animal in one. I was like, are you trying to be a child? Isn't she like my age? I mean, how old is this person?
Yeah, I think she's in her mid to late 40s maybe. Yeah, I'm just in general not on board with like you don't I understand you have fans that might be concerned and everything, but you can if you really feel the need to address it, you can just be like I was in the hospital for a little bit, but everything's okay now and I'm working it out. Like the only reason I don't know, there's very few reasons I feel like you need to act like I don't think you ever need to post pictures of yourself in the hospital. I'm thinking like let's say you had a public appearance that you had to cancel at the very last minute, right? You might be like I had an emergency and I can't make it tonight. You don't need to like post a picture of you suffering in the hospital.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that's all about, but she said, so this is what I wanted to talk about is what she said. She said that she had something called a Mallory Weiss tear. And that is when the lining of the esophagus where it meets the stomach rips. And it most commonly happens in alcoholics because they vomit so much. But it also could happen in people that are bulimic too, right?
Mhm.
These tears don't typically happen because a person is stressed out. And these tears are what causes the vomiting is a result of is not a result of the tears. It's a result of the vomiting. Like she had something that was causing her to vomit so much that it tore and then it started being bloody
But
vomit.
could you argue that stress like her body's way of processing stress could have induced vomiting?
Like that? Like
I don't know, I'm
violent,
just
violent?
asking.
Like think about if you're an alcoholic or you're bulimic and you're violently vomiting multiple times a day. Can stress do that? Perhaps. I just it's not even looking it up today because the first thing like you don't hear about that too much because it's not a super common thing. And when I read it, I was just like, "Oh, I thought that was an alcoholic thing," right? And I look it up today and it's like I didn't find anything about this being caused by stress at all. It's induced by trauma obviously or just like it's a specific thing of this violent vomiting that could cause these tears and then once you get the tears you could start vomiting blood because the tears obviously bleed. So I'm not sure what she's trying what she's trying to tell everybody because she doesn't really say well why she was vomiting so much. And then she had this other thing that she said she had called mast cell disease. And mast cells are cells that are part of our immune system and they recognize like foreign intruders like bacteria, parasites and stuff like that. And what they do is they release something called histamine. Everybody knows what that is when you take an antihistamine. So it gives you kind of this allergic reaction. And when you have mast cell syndrome, it's a person that has too many mast cells. So it's producing a lot of histamine and it's giving you like this kind of appearance of having a really terrible allergic reaction when you're really not. They don't really know what it's caused by. But that which obviously sucks if you have that. I don't think that that has anything to do with these Mallory Weiss tears that she was saying that she had. So who knows what's going on with her, but like I don't know. I just kind of think she's a flake with the pictures and stuff, so it's hard for me to just like listen to any of it.
Yeah, I think it was just a poor response to criticism and you don't have to address everybody. Somebody on the internet is going to have a problem with what you're doing no matter what you're doing. So, I think it's just best to get in the mind space of just like ignore people and you don't have to address everything going on in your life because it's really nobody's business.
Okay, freak accidents.
So, this mom in London was taking a video of her 2-year-old son on a Ferris wheel when he so cutely said, "The door's open." And so she said she pulled him away from the door and held him on the other side of the pod so he wouldn't fall out, but she had to hold the door to this Ferris wheel pod shut for the whole 15-minute ride.
All right, again, this was when I read this, the first thing I thought was like, okay, but you took a picture of this to show people online.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but like if that happened, the last thing that you would do would be to take a picture of your 2-year-old sitting next to an open door just to
No, no,
capture
no.
proof.
The picture wasn't of the kid next to the open door as proof. She was taking a video of him to like just have a cute video of him riding the Ferris wheel, and he said the door's open. And then she put the phone down immediately. She did take a picture of the door open later, of just the door open. And I think that was for documentation purposes.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, like,
I just think that the phone shit is getting out of
well, I
control.
think
Like
everybody's
honestly.
living in this lawsuit mentality. Like, I don't think my first thought, well, I don't know. I feel like because of covering these stories so often where all this stuff goes wrong, and just really quick, as a result of this, she reported it, and the people were like, "What do you want us to do about it?" Basically, and nothing happened. I think people just get in the mindset of like, I need evidence, so I'm gonna take a picture.
Yeah, and I don't think. I mean, honestly, like, I don't really think that that's that big of a deal if that was open because I feel like there's some that are just open all the time because it's not a ride that you should, like you go on a gondola and it has that little thing over your lap. Sometimes they don't even have them because they're just one of those rides that if you just sit still, you're not going to fall out of it.
Well,
It's the same with the Ferris wheel.
I think they just like, I think a simple solution is just to put a note on it that says this one's out of order. It's like
Oh, yeah,
pretty
totally.
it's pretty basic, I assume a fair has a printer somewhere on premises. Just print out a sign that says out of order on that pod and then go on with it. Just to
Or like a marker and
yeah,
a piece of paper
just to minimize
and a napkin.
the liability risk, but like to say I'm not going to do anything about it. So then she goes to TikTok, which to bring awareness of this, whatever. But I think people are just living in this mindset constantly now because of all these stories. Like, I need evidence when something bad happens to me, and I'm going to blow up your spot on the internet if you don't handle it the right way.
Yeah.
So, this next story is what you were referencing earlier. So, in Mexico, 5 women were in a really bad car accident that overturned the vehicle, and shockingly, 2 of them crawled out of the overturned car, bleeding everywhere, and then they decided to take a selfie together.
I I don't know what is going on with the selfie situation. Like we were at the Phillies game last week and my husband and I were sitting on the edge of like our group. And this girl that was sitting in front of us, she was my age and she sat there and took at least 10 selfies of herself and we were in the background like against our will. But I just kept thinking like what is this girl doing?
Well,
Why does she
I
it's
think
so weird to
taking
me.
selfies at a ballpark is different than taking them after a horrific car accident. Like, she might just want a memory of her being at this game. I understand to you it was an obnoxious trait, but to see somebody crawling out of an overturned vehicle covered in blood, one of them couldn't even walk by herself, just to be taking a bunch of, like, not like pictures of their injuries, like legit selfies with one another is crazy.
It I agree that it's not the same, but the whole mentality of just like I have to keep taking pictures of myself, it's just freaking weird to
Well, if
me.
people want to take pictures of themselves, let them take pictures of themselves. It literally doesn't matter. But like, this is a very odd behavior to be in a potentially life threatening situation and immediately take pictures. The other 3 people weren't even out of the car yet, so
Yeah, and it's something that we see in the grocery room all the time with the submissions we get is just there's this certain level of like, oh, let me either take a picture of myself or let me take out my camera and video it before the human aspect of like, oh my God, are those people okay? Let me help them. Let me see if I could do something to stop this or whatever. People are living now to go viral on TikTok. It's insane.
yeah. All right, so the next story, in the UK in 2016, a man had hernia surgery. So, after the procedure, his surgeon was driving home, realized he left a specimen bag and part of the man's bowel that had been cut out during the surgery inside of the patient, turned the car around, went to the guy as he's waking up from his anesthesia and says, "Sorry, you got to go back into surgery so I could take these things out." So, all these years later, this patient has said, quote, "There's no doubt whatsoever that I'm suffering. It affected me. I have a weak abdomen now. I can't really lift anything heavy." So, it led to an investigation, and eventually in 2020, they gave the patient 15,000 pounds as an apology, which is that really enough?
No, but this is one I was talking about this with my friend yesterday. There's these things like lawsuits in the hospital and it's kind of like if you don't die or get seriously injured and debilitated for life, your lawsuit is kind of just not going to work. And that's how hospitals unfortunately get away with like treating patients like total crap sometimes. And I think you could talk to any single person you know, especially women that have given birth, and be like, what was your experience here at the hospital? And you would have more people than not say how they were mistreated or mishandled, or they didn't have a positive experience. And it's little things like this guy, he didn't even go home yet. He didn't die. He didn't get sick. He didn't become septic. They had to put him under anesthesia again and open up an incision that was brand new. So it's not like they had to even cut him again. So I'm like, yes, it's malpractice at its best and everything like that. But ultimately, like, he's alive. He's fine. I understand that he's saying he has abdominal pain and stuff, but I feel like he would have had that anyway because he had the surgery done. Any person that had this done. I think he had a hernia surgery, and sometimes when you have a hernia, which is like an opening in your abdominal wall, sometimes a piece of your bowel could get stuck in that opening and it could squeeze off your bowel. It's called an incarcerated hernia. So when they go in to close the abdominal wall hernia, they also go in and clip a little piece of the bowel out because sometimes it could die off the piece that gets stuck in there. And I don't know about you, Ree, but I've had this happen, like, especially when I was at the hospital working. We had these cassettes that we had to put on the machine overnight every single night. So there was all the work that we cut all day. We would put in these little cassettes and we would sit them on our desk. And at the end of the night, we had to put them on the machine so the next morning the histotechs could cut it and make slides. Well, you're running around and you're such a crazy person at work all day and you stay an hour late. And I would be driving home. It always never failed that it happened like on a Friday night or something when I wanted to be done with work. And I would just be sitting there eating dinner or something and then be like, oh my God, I forgot to put the cassettes on the machine. And I'd have to go back to the hospital. First, I would call someone and pray that someone was still there. That never happened. But, drive back to the hospital and put them on because it would completely like screw up the next day of work for people. And I guess this is what happened to this surgeon, that he was driving home and he was like, holy shit, like I leaned that down in the guy's stomach and I never took it out before I sewed him up kind of
I
thing.
mean, I've never done anything that serious. I've definitely gotten home from work or woken up in the middle of the night and been like, oh, I never brought ketchup to table 13 when they asked me to put it.
Well, you see how it
That's
happens though, right?
ketchup.
When you're frazzled.
Yeah, I know, of course, how it happens, but I feel like with a team of surgeons and everything, it's like nobody's just going in there and double checking. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think when you take the piece of bowel out, normally I don't even understand why it would ever go into the body. Like, I would feel like you take it out, you put it in a bag, you put it on the counter, but maybe he took it out, put it in a bag, and like leaned it down next to his hand to finish sewing something up and just was like, oh, I'll just grab this in a second, and then got distracted by something. But yeah, there's all these checks. This wasn't in America, right?
No, it was
It
in
was
the
in
UK.
I mean, obviously, their medicine's pretty equivalent to ours there, but I feel like here there's a lot of checks. Like, we had this many tools, and now we still have this many tools, but again, that wouldn't count, like, do we have the specimen in the bag? But that would have gotten realized even in a couple days when the guy didn't send it to pathology never got it, and then they would be like, "Well, where is it?" And that could I mean, if that stayed inside the dude, it would have been a huge, huge problem. But it the I mean, it sucks that you have to go back under anesthesia, get your staples or whatever opened up to go back in and take it out, but that 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 incision was already there. You know what I mean? It wasn't healed at all. They just kind of cut the staples off, put them back on.
Yeah, I mean, and as we see with other hospital malpractice stories, despite many concerns by his coworkers and upper management, this guy stayed working in this hospital system for years. And in 2023, four whistleblowers told BBC that multiple patients had died while others were, quote, effectively maimed. And the whistleblowers also complained of a mafia like management culture in this hospital network. So that's not really surprising to me that, they had this issue and then had the investigation, and then it turned out there was much larger problems going on.
Yeah, and the scary part is as a patient is that you would just never know that this stuff was happening. I mean, you go to your doctor, let's say you just have a hernia, you go. I mean, now it's a little better with the internet and stuff because you can really look up reviews and it it comes to light a little bit more than it used to, because how would you ever know before the internet, you know?
Yeah, but even like so in the grocery room this week, our high profile dissection was about the Bad Surgeon documentary on Netflix with Dr. Paul Macchiarini, and even in my research, I just covered that i- people knew his patients were dying, but they were just attributing it to like, well, he's trying this experimental thing. He's a super surgeon and all this, and it turns out he had like no research, really exaggerated medical background, and they were just letting this go on for years and years and years until all these people died under his care, right? So it's just really hard to trust the system. And one family even found him through an interview Diane Sawyer did with like saying he was like this amazing person and all this stuff. So reviews aren't always everything as well. It just really sucks that there's just lack of trust you kind of have to have in the system, and you have to do all your own research before making a decision like this.
Yeah, and I mean, you've seen them do that with other doctors in the news too, like lifting them up on this thing, and you're like, you don't even know the half of what goes on behind the scenes, so don't be like propping these people up, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
This episode is brought to you by CrimeCon.
CrimeCon is only 3 days away, guys, and we are so excited we are finally going. So, we have our very first live show for the podcast, and you have your lecture and a meet and greet. We are so excited to meet everybody.
Yeah, I can't wait. We've been trying on outfits this week, and I already am packed and ready to go. So we'll be going in a couple days, and our husbands will be there with us too. It's just going to be a fun time.
And I was excited on CrimeCon's Instagram today. At CrimeCon, they posted a map of the venue. So I know that's going to be really helpful for everybody to find where all the sessions are. And if you've been part of their mailing list, you can sign up for that at crimecon.com/email. You get all the news first before they post it on Instagram. So I've been in the loop before you've been in the loop, and I'm very excited for everything.
Thanks, CrimeCon. Let's get into some violent crimes.
So last Thursday in Fort Wayne, Indiana, a 20-year-old went live on Facebook from a Kroger's bathroom telling viewers he was trying to kill 11 people. So he entered the regular part of the grocery store and started asking his viewers who he should kill, all while showing his gun off on the Facebook Live. Somebody had said this old man in front of him, and he said, "I'm not killing this old guy." So as he approached the bakery section, he was seen lifting his gun and shooting at an employee and two customers. He then fled the scene, went directly into a bank across the street, and police quickly obtained him after that.
Could we just have a ban on Facebook Live?
I know, we
Like,
talk about so many stories where they're...
why do we need it to exist in the world? What is the positive? Like, I don't even know, because like whoever's doing Facebook Live, like, how is it bringing joy to our life that we cannot live without?
I feel like during COVID, it was most utilized. I mean, you used to do Instagram Lives as a way to do Q&As and connect with people and everything, but they've just kind of fallen off. And all we've seen lately is these horrible negative stories associated with Facebook Live.
It just it doesn't need to exist. I mean, it was nice during the pandemic, but still, if it didn't exist, like, everybody would be fine. It just we can name a handful of stories that we know that happened in this way. And I also want to know, are they investigating the person that responded and said, shoot that old guy?
Yeah, exactly. That was my first thought too. I think it's really scary that, like, I'm wondering, did the police get there after the gunshots, or was somebody watching the live and called the police, right? Are people that are watching these things engaging and alerting authorities that it's going on, or they're just kind of like, oh, let me see what happens?
And the algorithm for Instagram and Facebook could pick up every single little thing. They can't pick up when somebody has a gun in the video.
I know.
Really, I just want to know, because they can, I mean, I see special effects makeup artists that are having their things blocked because it looks like a real wound or something like that. You mean to tell me that can't pick up someone holding a gun?
I mean, I think last week we even talked about a kitchen knife company has been effectively banned for selling homemade kitchen knives.
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous how their thing is picking up stuff. It could, between the actual gun in the video and the stuff that guy was saying, that none of that got picked up.
Yeah,
it's just such bullshit.
So police eventually found his gun, phone, and wallet in a dumpster at a nearby store. He told police he didn't want to shoot any old people and chose to shoot at the three he did because they were just standing there with no cover. And then he said, quote, he always wanted to kill somebody.
Yeah, there's really a lack of humanity with some people, and it's increasing that there's just this lack of respect for life.
Yeah, there really is. So thankfully, none of these people died. Yeah, he didn't kill anybody as a result of this. So that's the best possible situation out of this. And he's facing 3 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of criminal recklessness. So the maximum for all of those would be 126 years in prison, which I think we all know he is definitely a harm to society, and hopefully justice is served in this case.
Yeah, and just because people don't die, I mean, getting shot could really, even if it's a simple thing in your leg that wasn't really considered life-threatening, it could have broke your bone though, and you can be having surgeries and problems walking for the rest of your life for that. So it's all because like this guy felt like killing someone. Like how weird and disturbing is that?
Yeah, and it's just yeah, it's not even if people are died or not. Like you said, it's the trauma of getting shot. It's the trauma of all the bystanders in the store, just doing a basic task of grocery shopping and just trying to have a normal day, and then this person that's just not okay comes in the store and is, streaming this entire thing on the internet. It's incredibly disturbing.
The more disturbing part is that the people were responding. That's really what saddens me the most. That even one person, because you're always going to have a crazy person, right? And but when there's another person that's just like, yeah, like how could like it's so scary that you're surrounded by people that really are just that disconnected from human life like that. It's scary.
Yeah, this is a really scary story. It could happen at any grocery store, and it's horrible we have to report things like this.
Well, speaking of crazy people, let's talk about another case this week.
God, this one made me want to throw up when I was reading it. So, outside of Boston, a woman took her 3 daughters and their friend to see the movie If at a theater. This guy snuck up behind them in the row. They were the only people in the theater and started stabbing the girls. So, this guy was 26 years old. He quickly left the scene, then went to a McDonald's 30 miles away from where he stabbed the girls and stabbed an employee through the drive-through window, then parked the car and then went inside and then stabbed another person.
Well, this is just proof that we always talk about shooting sprees and of course they're terrible and the gun situation is terrible, but this is the kind of thing that we've talked about for over the past couple of weeks. There's been multiple situations of people killing a lot of people in one sitting with a knife as well. And clearly if this guy knew what he was doing, it could have been worse, honestly, if he knew from an anatomic standpoint how to hurt someone worse. But luckily, he didn't hurt anyone worse. Just imagine like children like having to heal from this. And
Yeah, none of them had life-threatening injuries, but like we were just talking about, it doesn't matter. They're little kids. They got stabbed doing, a fun activity, going to the movies. The people at McDonald's were just going about their business and got stabbed out of nowhere. Even though you don't die from it and you might not have injuries for the rest of your life related to this incident, how are you not traumatized going out in public ever again?
I know it's just terrible to think. And I think the I've been in that area before. It's like near Cape Cod and stuff. And it's just you would think if being a mom, dropping like having a kids from age 9 to 17, you would feel comfortable leaving them in a movie theater when nobody was even there in the middle of the afternoon on a quiet, seemingly quiet day. This is why like it frightens me to ever let the kids be alone because you just never know if something like this is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean this person just must have been going through crisis. So like then after this whole stabbing spree, he ends up on this police chase until he crashed his Porsche SUV, and he's also suspected of murder in Connecticut as well. Just how is this happening?
I don't know, but always under this violent crime section, we always just have like the most despicable humans in society. And this next woman is also, we could say,
Asshole of
one
the
of,
week.
yeah, exactly.
So, a woman has been sentenced to 9 years in jail for manslaughter of her 4-year-old daughter. So, In January of 2022, the toddler died from complications related to diabetes and severe dental decay after her mother often gave her bottles of baby formula mixed with Mountain Dew.
So she has this kid who's 4 years old that has diabetes, and she has another child that is also younger who was diagnosed with diabetes. And you can get diabetes from eating a diet that's high in processed foods and high in sugar, that you could induce it on children, right? So I don't know if, I mean, obviously there's like type 1 diabetes, which is you're not in control of. I don't know what type of diabetes that the kid had, but regardless, it's like, how could you give a child that you know is a diabetic Mountain Dew?
Well, should the child have also been having baby formula at 4 years old?
No, but I mean, how long was she giving? I think that they were trying to imply that she was giving the baby Mountain Dew for years because of the teeth decay and everything.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. So they're saying the girl was malnourished and many of her teeth had rotted away. I personally don't think like manslaughter is the correct charge. I feel like this should be a murder charge.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's not even going to get that much time for it. It's gross.
I understand manslaughter is like death related to negligence, but I don't even like I feel like this was intentional.
Yeah. Like you don't, if you know that your child has a whole entire disease that's dedicated to sugar intake and you're giving them sugar, it's kind of weird.
It is. So the father also pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter, and he's set to be sentenced in a couple weeks. But it's like, I just feel like these two people are just getting off kind of easy for the death of a poor innocent child.
I know.
It's just disgusting.
All right, let's get started with some medical news.
So this family booked a cruise to celebrate their mother's 70th birthday, and almost immediately after getting on board were greeted by a bedbug infestation, which got worse as the cruise progressed. So I guess once you're on a cruise, you can't get off.
I'm anti-cruise, so
Yeah, I am too.
don't
So-
ask me. There's just multiple reasons why I would never have anything to do with that.
Yeah, so they said in the bathroom there was literally one crawling on me. In the bed I could feel things and peeled back the sheets, and that's when we saw quite a number of bugs in the bed with us. So then this person goes on to talk about how they had a dress hanging in the closet and there was bugs all over it. And when they reported it to staff, they didn't really seem concerned, and the cruise line said that there was no evidence of a bed bug infestation when they cleaned the room. So I don't know. Like the second I saw a bug, I would not be staying in that room any longer, and I don't know what went wrong at the beginning here, right? If you went right in the room, wouldn't you not continue to unpack your stuff?
I don't know what happened though. Like maybe it took a while. I do want to start getting in the habit of doing that. Like fortunately I've never had a situation with an encounter with bed bugs, but a lot of people say like as soon as you get to a hotel, you should just lift up the mattress and check to see like if you, cuz you could see them with your naked eye. They're pretty large, you could see them. But they're terrible. They're almost like lice. Like it's like if it gets on your clothes and then you put it in your suitcase, like you could bring that shit home, and like it's just terrible. They don't really carry diseases, but they're gross. I mean, it's gross to have bugs crawling on you, and they do bite you and feed off of you. They suck the blood out of
Yeah.
you. And it's just like you can have an allergy to them too, which can cause you to become extremely itchy, uncomfortable, have really big welts all over your body. So it's just disgusting. And to encounter it on vacation in a place where you would consider to be clean, like a cruise ship, like it's like a hotel basically.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to some gross place or anything.
I also feel like there's this association with cheap motel hotels and bed bugs, and they can really be anywhere. Remember we covered
Yeah, like I should have checked in Las Vegas at the Luxor because that looked like the kind of place that would have had one.
Remember a couple years ago we covered that there was this mass bedbug infestation in Paris? Like it was everywhere.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's always this strict association with like quote unquote dirty motels and bedbugs, but they like this seemed like a nicer cruise liner and they had them too. And I don't know. I feel like after I saw one bug, I'd immediately have to remove myself from the situation, but I don't know the order that these things happen. I just know they said it was pretty quick into their journey, and
Yeah, and, like, seriously, what are you going to do on a cruise? Be like, "F this, I'm out of here."
I
Like,
know.
you could get another room, but the chances are they're just gonna be there too, so
Yeah, and I think I read later in the article they said that they had to completely unpack everything on their front lawn and throw out most of the clothes they brought because they didn't want to bring it in the house. Like, bed bugs are probably the worst thing you could ever get.
well,
I'm just
there's
saying
wor
as far as I'm saying as far as being annoying, bringing into your house and having to get an exterminator, and they're really hard to get rid
Yeah.
of, and
I mean, it's lice, fleas, they're all up there with the same kind of thing that just are very hard to get rid of, and they're a total nuisance.
all right, on to the next story. So in 2022, a family got together in South Dakota and ate kebabs of black bear meat a family member had, quote, harvested in Canada. That was my first question, was like, where are you getting black bear meat, right? Because do butchers do that?
I think, Louis killed a deer once, and he brought it to a butcher, and then they gave him the deer meat, which was disgusting, by the way, like,
It's
I
very
remember
gamey.
I remember he brought it home, and I think my mom, like, tried to put it on the George Foreman grill. Remember that
Ew.
was, like, a thing
Yeah.
back in the day? And it smelled so bad. It didn't smell, like, rotten, it just smelled, like, weird, like, the weirdest smell ever, and I wouldn't eat it, and then we just cleaned the George Foreman grill, and we couldn't get the smell away, we had to throw it out and get a new one, like, the smell was just, like, very distinct and disgusting, like, um, but yeah, like, I guess you would say gamey or whatever, but I guess if you kill a black bear, if you're, legally allowed to, you could get it cut the same way that you would with a deer.
Yeah, I'm just very curious about that. So, anyway, they didn't have a meat thermometer, and initially they had served it rare before they realized it wasn't cooked all the way, and then they took it back and cooked it the rest of the way. But days later, pretty much everybody that ate it got really sick.
Yeah, so actually 6 people got sick, and of the 6 people, 4 of them ate the meat, and 2 of them only had, like, veggie kebabs, but they had contamination from the meat,
Yeah.
and, they were having all these weird symptoms, and they had a blood test that showed they had high eosinophils. So eosinophils are cells, they're white blood cells that are present in your blood, but when they're really high, that could be indicative of an allergic reaction or a parasitic infection. So whenever a doctor sees something like that, they're like, what's going on? This is weird because you don't normally have so many. And then when they heard the story, they were like, okay, this is what it was. And the grossest part of the story is that when they did, the epidemiology and they found out what the source was, the person had some pieces of the meat left inside of their freezer, and they found the parasite organism that was called Trichinella nativa, and it is a specific kind of worm that does not respond to freezing, so it was still alive and moving larvae way when they examined the meat.
Ew. That
Yeah,
is disgusting.
exactly. So I just saw this is like we don't even have this news story, but there was some TikTok going viral of some girl that went to Costco and bought frozen um salmon,
Mhm.
and there was like lots of parasitic worms in the salmon.
Ew.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I've seen that multiple times. I've seen people with not even the frozen one, like the fresh fillets that they have in the fridge section at Costco. It's always Costco, that you could see like the little tiny worms like squiggling around underneath of that saran wrapper that they have on it. Like,
So you think that, like, at Costco, is that all fish related stories, or is that any meat?
no, no, I've never heard of it with meat. It's always salmon. That's
Weird.
that's the one that I hear of all the time, and
Ew.
a lot of people were commenting under that particular post and just saying, like, "Just cook it and it'll be fine," kinda thing, which is why you should cook it all the way. I was surprised because when we went out to dinner with Rita and Bill the other day, they were talking about the salmon they had on the menu, and they said, "Oh, it's served medium. Is that okay with you?" And she was like, "No, I want it well done," which is smart. I think it's weird because salmon could so commonly have parasites in it.
That's interesting because I don't eat fish, so I don't know how it's prepared typically, but I never heard of salmon coming at a certain temperature.
Me neither. I always thought that that was like one of those ones. It's like pork, like you always cook it all the way.
Well, we were at this restaurant in South Philly one time, and the waitress, who was like this really old school South Philly Italian lady, asked Ricky if he wanted his pork chop medium rare, and he was like, no, I really don't. And it came out, and it was not cooked all the way, and it's just so disgusting. He was like, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
want to
so
eat
weird,
here again.
right?
Yeah. So
But with like cow though, you're like, oh, it could be bleeding on the plate and you're fine.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. So, well, that's also why stacking meat in the fridge is really important, because if juices drip onto other meats below, you need to make sure the ones getting the juices below are cooked at a higher temperature to kill that bacteria off.
yeah, that's
So they always say
interesting.
you stack like beef, then pork, then chicken.
Yeah,
Like
that's
beef
weird.
at the top, pork in the middle,
Yeah.
chicken at the bottom. So it's really important to just think about this, but this is pretty disgusting. I don't think I would ever eat bear meat, but I'm weird with textures and stuff, so I'm not really that willing to try new meats in general.
Do you know? So one time I went to, you know how sometimes in Philly, I don't even know what this event was for. I went years ago, but it was like there was like 30 different restaurants from Philly, and you can go to each one of them and get this little tiny sample of something that they had, and it was free. It
Okay.
was really cool. It was like in a convention center on Broad Street, kind of near Hahnemann, in between Hahnemann and Temple, right?
Okay.
And I went there, and I went to this one, and it was a Garces restaurant. I'm not sure which. I think there was one in the Reading Terminal Market or something. It was like one of those, it was like a deli type Garces restaurant. Anyway, it had this really delicious thing that it was like a beef thing, and it had some mustard on it, and it was so good, and it was so tender, and I was like, "Oh my god, like what was that? That was so good." And they were like, "Oh, it's beef tongue." And I was like, "I literally never would have ate that, but since you didn't tell me, I thought it was great."
I like you said when Mama made the deer, was it like a deer steak?
I don't even know what it was. It just was like it smelled the house up. It just was so
Cuz
disgusting.
I've had like deer meat in like shepherd's pie and stuff, and like, when it's ground, I feel like it's
It wasn't
much
ground.
better.
Yeah, I guess it was like a
I
steak.
think these gamey meats when they're ground are definitely easier to eat. Like when you have like duck meatballs or duck confit that's shredded and stuff, it's easier than having like a big chunk of it. So I'm interested what the smell was.
Yeah, ask her about it because she'll tell you
I
like
know
it
the
just was
story from our family.
it was
Like it comes
disturbing.
up. It's
That was
kind of
when I was
gross.
like, I mean, I was like a teenager, and I was just in my kick of like making my grilled chicken on the George Foreman grill every day. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, ew. And then I remember I cooked the chicken on there, and I was like, it still tastes like the deer. Ugh.
I mean, honestly, cooking a steak on the George Foreman grill sounds disgusting, so I can't imagine cooking anything else
Well,
on
I was
there.
a teenager. It was easy. It was an easy meal.
All right. Next, a doctor wrote an article for the Daily Mail detailing how a few years ago he intentionally infected himself with tapeworms to study what happened.
So I guess there's been some research that tapeworm infections could help with inflammation and autoimmune type things. So this doctor decided that he was going to give himself a tapeworm. And we've heard about this over the past like 10 years that people intentionally are ingesting tapeworms in order to lose weight. And so he traveled to Kenya and found an infected cow and gave himself a tapeworm. And one of the things that he wanted to say was that he didn't lose any weight, so that might be like a wives' tale that you could lose weight from a parasite. But over the next 8 weeks after he ingested this parasite, the tapeworms latched into his intestine, and he was able he did this under he himself is a doctor and also did it under a doctor's order, so they monitored him and they did an endoscopy to see the worms in his abdomen, and he really got grossed out about that, so he decided to take medication to get rid of them right away. It was just, like, a little too much to see. I totally agree with that.
So he doesn't recommend it then.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really know what he was trying to get out of it, like, if he was actually doing some kind of, like, legit research to see if it was changing anything or if just he did it just to see what the experience was like because I mean, I guess if they had properties to stop inflammation or to help people with autoimmune diseases, it could be something that could be given to patients in a controlled environment, but that's nothing that's happening anytime soon, hopefully.
Yeah. All right. So this next one is really gross. In Australia, a McDonald's employee was caught on video drying a wet mop under the heating lamp of the French fry station. So, AKA, they were dripping dirty ass mop bacteria all over the French fries. So, this woman who took the video said she overheard another employee saying she didn't think the woman should do that because it might catch on fire, not because of how disgusting it was. And then another employee was reaching around this person and the mop and grabbing french fries for orders.
Oh, God.
Absolutely horrific.
Think about this. Do you think that they have more than one mop at McDonald's?
They might.
Like, that's the same mop that cleans the bathroom. That there's, like, men's piss all over the floor,
Yeah.
around the toilet, and, like, little kids' shit and everything else. And they use that to mop the floor. And then they're going and hanging up this wet mop that's getting bacteria and getting mildew and stuff and letting it dry. And then they're deciding to dry it out underneath of the fry warmer. That's just great.
Oh my God. It is so absolutely disgusting. And what's more disturbing for me about this is it seems like something everybody was used to. So, like, how long has this been going on?
Yeah, and you wouldn't think, like, if one of your fries felt kind of wet, you would just be like, oh, it's oil or something. Like, you wouldn't even think anything of it.
Ugh. The thought of this skeeves me out so bad. No.
Yeah, and it's not to mention that the chemicals that you use to clean the floor, like they might use bleach or some kind of detergents or some harsh chemicals that should also not be dripping onto your food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, what's wrong with people?
It's problematic for so many reasons. I can't see this ever being okay. And then McDonald's came out and said that they gave everybody the proper food safety training that they needed. So I'm like, well, were they not given it before? Because
No, you can't train people that are that stupid. You just can't, because there's just going to be another situation that comes up that they just don't understand. Like, why would you even need to dry a mop anyway?
I don't
Like,
know.
wring it out in the little thing. That's it.
Yeah,
Like,
you wring it out and then you let it dry. I don't understand why it ever had to be dried out like that, and I don't understand why somebody's first hesitance with it is that it might catch on fire. So it's scary.
it's alarming, actually. This episode is brought to you by The Gross Room. The Gross Room is on sale for only $20 for a whole year of gross, and it ends on Thursday night, so you guys better make sure that you get in at this awesome deal.
And bonus, we're doing a little giveaway, so anybody that joins during this sale for a yearly membership will enter the chance to win a signed book by you, a Dora Mater enamel pin, and some goodies from some of our sponsors. It's a pretty awesome little care package.
Yeah, and you guys should really get in, because the Gross Room is just the best place on earth. We're in there every single day talking to the members and just having really great conversation. This week we were talking about different childhood injuries that you have gotten, any kind of scary things that have happened on road trips. And some of our members have some insane stories.
They definitely do.
It's really nice to talk to people that have lived through stuff and have that outlet where you can talk about this crazy stuff that happens to you, where people are interested in what you have to say. The Gross Room also we have thousands of videos, photos, and just articles, celebrity death dissections, high profile death dissections. It's a really awesome place to be. And especially if you're into this kind of content, we cover everything. Breaking news, we cover just anything that you could be interested in with the human body.
Yeah, so visit thegrossroom.com now through May 30th at 11:59 p.m. EST. Just sign up for a yearly membership, and that'll be your entry to get the giveaway package. So we'll shoot you an email once the giveaway is over, and you can claim your prize.
Awesome. All right, let's get on to some other death news.
So there's this rumor that when Napoleon Bonaparte died over 200 years ago, a doctor was acting out of spite and cut his 1.5-inch penis off during an autopsy. The penis was then sold at an auction to a urologist.
And So now who has it? His daughter claims to have it in
Yeah.
his collection.
So after he died, he like didn't tell anybody about it and just kind of kept it hidden within his personal stuff. And then he died and his daughter ended up inheriting this penis.
I hate in the article that they don't show us a picture what it looks like, but they said it looks like a little shriveled up pinky finger,
It,
like a beef jerky.
yeah, I mean, kind of gross to think about having somebody's like penis shriveled up in a box. Did you see the box? It was like this gorgeous, elegant little keepsake box that this shriveled up penis is in.
Yeah, I kind of want to call her and like offer her money for it.
Yeah,
I'm interested in having that in my collection, to be honest.
yeah, she's a New Jersey resident,
Oh
so
shit, I better give her. I better be like, yo, Jers, represent. Sell that to me. I'll take it.
so definitely an interesting tidbit. Remember there was this rumor going around that John Dillinger's penis was in the Mutter Museum?
Oh yeah, I
But
remember that. Well, in this article they have a list of the different things. So actually, Albert Einstein's brain was on display at the Mutter. I don't know if it is anymore because of their ridiculous rules anymore. But apparently, Thomas Edison's last breath, which is ridiculous, is on display.
how?
So I don't know. They were like, "Oh wait, before you die, put this bottle up to your mouth, and we will encase your breath."
Gross.
Beethoven's ear bones, Lincoln's skull fragments, and Galileo's finger. They're all on display throughout the world, in
Interesting.
case you were wondering.
Um, yeah, this is definitely an interesting little keepsake. She didn't want to, speak much about it, but I'm wondering if they're going to keep passing it down in their family or eventually donate it to a museum.
Or donate it to Nicole and Jemmy.
Can you imagine? That would be so crazy to
It
have
would be
in your
amazing.
collection.
I know, right?
All right, so on to question of the day. Every Friday at the at Mother Knows Death Instagram, we put a little question box up in the story so you guys could ask whatever you want. First question. How did you balance going to school, working, and being a single mom?
Good question. I don't know how I did that. Um, I did. There was a time where I was a single mom and I went to school full time and I worked full time, and it was crazy. I lived with my sister at the time, so she helped me a lot with Maria, at least, so I didn't have to worry about that. And my mom as well too lived closer to me, so it just was easy when my family helped me out. And just kind of crank through. And I just told Maria it was going to suck for 2 years. Like that's how I put it. And I just had a similar. We're gonna have an interview this week with my husband talking about doing his school and everything. So stay tuned for that. On when's that coming up? Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday.
On
So
Thursday.
all those who requested Gabe, your wishes come true. He was on the show. So
Yeah, so he'll be there Thursday, but that was one of the things we talked about. Like he came to me and was just like, "Listen, I want to do this, and then it's going to take me whatever it was 3 years, and it's going to suck." And that's what you have to do with your family. Just be like, "Listen, I need you to do this for this payoff for me." And for with Maria especially, it was even more important because I was a single mom, so I saw this opportunity that not only could I do something to make myself better, but like I was able to get a job where I could make more money, and that was the only way I could think of to make more money in order for us to eventually be able to afford a house by ourselves and have a car. She was getting to be a teenager, getting her a car and things like that. So it's kind of like when you live in a situation where you're a single kid, you kind of have to do that sacrifice. And my friend Annette just did it too with she went to nursing school and she had 2 boys, or she has 3 boys actually, but one's a little bit older. And she just was like, "Listen, like I have to do this and it's going to suck." And now it's awesome. She just makes so much more money, and it's just they can go on vacations more now and just do things that they weren't able to do before. So it's awesome, but it's kind of like a family sacrifice, and that's what Gabe was talking about. Like the whole family has to deal with it when you're in school, not just you.
yeah, I remember you sitting me down and being like, "Listen, I'm going back to school, and like the next 2 years are gonna really suck, but when it's done, it's gonna be worth it. So just like please be patient with me." And it clearly was worth it. And we had a really good relationship, which I feel like helps in all those cases too. Because like I think you had a lot of trust in me, so you weren't worried I was gonna be off doing bad stuff while you weren't around. And then, we had Annie to help out too, and I just hung out with them and mom, and it was fine, and I understood how beneficial it was going to be to our future together.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I was getting home at 11 o'clock at night some nights, just going to work after school and stuff, and it's just. I mean, luckily you were older, a little bit older too. I think you were like 13 or 14
Yeah.
when I started grad school anyway. Um, so that was I mean, I talk about the grad school because that was the most intense part of my education. Um, but she was a teenager, so it was like not that a teenager doesn't need a mom anymore because they certainly do, but she was a little bit more, self-sufficient. She could get home from school on her own and feed herself and like things like that.
Yeah,
So,
it ended up being totally fine. So I think as like a kid, you just have to have patience with your parents and understand it's to benefit you. It's not to blow you up. So it's worth it. All right, next. With all death and funeral traditions around the world, what do you find the most interesting?
I think I would say the Toraja in Indonesia are the most interesting. When their family member dies, they just have like the craziest ritual. Well, it's crazy for us, it's completely normal for them. But they keep their family member alive and keep them preserved eh, for a long time after they die, living in their house. And until they are able to afford to give them a proper burial. The burials are considered these huge things. They're like weddings. They could cost thousands of dollars, and the longer you leave your family member in the house, the more money you can save to have this funeral for them. And then once they're buried, they get exhumed every so often for these traditional ceremonies in which they bring, like, let's say the mom dies, they put the mom in the ground and then they open the coffin, they take the mom out, and then they dress the mom up and they have these parties. They might smoke a cigarette with someone. And the people, like, some woman that has done this with her mother said that she misses her mom and she just gets really excited when she comes out and her children get to see their grandmom and everything, and then she goes back in the ground for a little while, and then they take her out again in the next ceremony, and they dress her up again, and when you see the pictures of it, it's disturbing because the people are literally carrying around like mummies, but it's kind of romantic and cool at the same time, the tradition of it, so I I just am very interested in it, it's very cool.
Yeah, like we just had that episode with Paul come out, right? So I think everybody should definitely get his book Memento Mori because it really shows how sterile we view death. And I think when you see how other cultures celebrate it, it's just really cool and makes it kind of like less scary because you see that you might not be living on earth anymore, but there's this spiritual like afterworld you could go through and your family could still celebrate with you in some manner, and there's some sort of peace I find from that instead of just being like, oh, I'm just going to be in this box on the ground.
Yeah, and then especially when you read books by Paul and stuff, you're just like, okay, we're actually the weird ones that are
Yeah.
just so closed off about it, and then also when you see all of the photos he takes all around the world, especially in Europe, you see that it's weird how because so many of us have immigrated from Europe over time, how these traditions were being carried on for hundreds and thousands of years over in Europe. So it's weird that the way that we handle it in the Western world.
Yeah, like in other cultures, people just really seem to honor their dead, where here it's kind of just like, all right, on to the next.
Yeah,
So,
it is weird, but I mean, the good thing about living in America is that there's no hard and fast rules about what you have to. Well, there are to an extent, I
yeah, there
guess,
definitely are.
because you can't like
You
I
can't
I
have
mean
a
I
mummy.
always
You can't have a
mummified
mummified person
mom.
in your house because remember we covered Amy Carlson from the Love Has Won cult and they had her mummified in the house.
Yeah, like I always tell my mom I'm gonna get her taxidermied when she dies, but yeah, you're not allowed to do that. But you also you could do different things, like you can, I mean, I guess you can't really do anything like that good that you wanna do, but,
I'm sure there's
um
alternative methods to how you could do it, but we don't want to give any exact examples because we don't know legally in this country what you could do. So
yeah, but you're allo I mean, It is. And that's the thing in Europe. There's some cultures where you would keep your family member's skull or something like that, and where they would be used for art, kind of art.
Yeah.
Really, just really, really cool stuff. And I mean, it's frowned upon here, right? You're not even allowed to look at it in a museum anymore. It's so frowned upon.
Ugh. All right. Will your CrimeCon lecture be available in the gross room?
I don't think so.
The answer
Right?
is no. No. So
Yeah.
I know CrimeCon just got a deal with SiriusXM to broadcast some of their lectures. I'm going to say yours is not part of that because we haven't been notified of that, but otherwise it's going to be pretty exclusive to CrimeCon, so you have to go to see it.
Sorry.
And to those inquiring if I have lip injections and how I do it with my needle phobia, I do not have lip injections. These are au naturel, baby. So
She would never, and like it seriously is becoming a concern of mine because she's getting older and she's going to need to get Botox at some point. And I'm like, how are
thanks.
you going to? She even went to my appointment with Dr. Dimitri, and I was like, okay, just record this because we're going to show people like what it's like to get Botox or whatever I was getting at the time. And Maria was like, I'm sorry, like I have to leave the room. I feel like I'm going to faint. And we were like rolling our eyes.
Do you want me to pass out and embarrass you in the room, or do you want me to excuse myself and get through it?
Oh, it already embarrassed me, so it's fine.
Well, I don't really care. Not everybody could just blow things off. I have trauma. So, all right. Well, that's that on that. We'll see you guys at CrimeCon in a couple of days. We are really excited to see everybody going and meet some people. We're going to try to network and get some cool guests on the podcast. And yeah, we're super excited.
All right, thanks. We'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to Mother Knows Death. As a reminder, my training is as a pathologist assistant. I have a master's level education and specialize in anatomy and pathology education. I am not a doctor and I have not diagnosed or treated anyone, dead or alive, without the assistance of a licensed medical doctor. This show, my website, and social media accounts are designed to educate and inform people based on my experience working in pathology so they can make healthier decisions regarding their life and well-being. Always remember that science is changing every day and the opinions expressed in this episode are based on my knowledge of those subjects at the time of publication. If you are having a medical problem, have a medical question, or are having a medical emergency, please contact your physician or visit an urgent care center, emergency room, or hospital. Please rate, review, and subscribe to Mother Knows Death on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get podcasts. Thanks.